So welcome back. We are on lesson 3 of module 2. This is Exponential 201. And so we're talking about the Fantastic Four, the 4 things that you got to know really, really, really well to do Exponential 201 and launch Project 13 in your church. So we're talking about knowing yourself, your community, the data, understanding, keep knowing. We talked about number 2, the epic events for 13-year-olds. What does that take? What does that look like, feel like? Hopefully you got a taste for that. And now, number 3, we're going to talk about this time leadership training. Now, this may be something that you don't have a lot of going on in your church right now. That's all right. You can start. And maybe you don't have any of it going on for youth in your church. And so, many people, most people, maybe even around your table right there, have not been through like an official leadership training course. And that's okay. We all are just who we are. We're going to start right where we're at. So you might be thinking, how do I train them in leadership if I haven't been trained in leadership? Or maybe I kind of have some natural abilities, but I don't know what else, and this kind of thing. And so just the premise is this: we want young people to begin to grow in their faith and then ultimately to start helping them become leaders. You've got to have leaders because if you're going to have an exponential machine, right, you've got to have small groups. Each of those small groups have to have leaders. You don't want like a 17-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old leading a group of 13-year-olds or a 40-year-old leading a group of 13-year-olds. Really, what you want is like 14 and 15-year-olds leading 13-year-olds, 17-year-olds leading like 15-year-olds. You want it where everybody gets to be a part of this. You don't have to be a Christian for 10 years to start leading somebody, okay? So, in order for the epic event for 13-year-olds to work like magic, you've got to begin recruiting and training people immediately within the next month or two. You'll see as we kind of unfold. We're talking about the plan now. We'll talk about the process of implementation. But you've got to start getting your first group of youth to be trained as leaders so that they are ready. So we're going to talk about that first. The first idea here is how do you get that first group? So say, for example, you start and say 4 months from now, maybe 5 months from now, you have your first epic event. Okay, so everything's geared towards that. So now you've got to recruit and train the first group of leaders, of young people that are leaders, to be prepared for that. So how do you do that? Let me just walk through it with you. First of all, don't make an announcement. Don't try to recruit people like from the front. What you want to do is maybe sit around the table, you guys or other people that you know in your church, say, I want to know who's on the short list, the top 10 of 14, 15, 16-year-olds right now that have proven they're deep in the Lord, they're serious about God, they're not playing games, and you want to handpick them. That's what I'm talking about. They may not be popular, that doesn't matter. May not be good on the football team, that doesn't matter. It matters their character. It matters that they've shown faithfulness, okay? And I would go after them one at a time and assign somebody, whether it's the youth leader, youth pastor, somebody else, say, go get a Coke with them, get a coffee with them. In the next few weeks here, as we start to launch what we call phase 1, you'll see it here, is our quiet phase. We're not announcing it to everybody, but we're going to start making plans on the DL, on the down low, before everybody knows. So you approach these guys one-on-one, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 6-year-old, and say, have coffee with them. Say, listen, we're getting ready to start this thing called Project 13. And you just fill them full of vision. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. In a year, we think this is going to happen. The next couple years, this is going to happen. And we think you might be able to be a key part of this. So what you're doing is you're giving them value. You're giving them esteem. You're showing them that you think that they're important. And so what you're hoping is that they go, okay, well, what do you mean? What could I do? Well, we think you have the potential to maybe become a leader. Because part of this plan is that it requires young people to rise up and to become leaders so that when all these 13-year-olds start coming to Christ, they have someone they can look up to. So we'd like you to think about, we're handpicking the first group of leaders. And we'd like you to think about being one of those. And what that means is we're going to start meeting once a week, maybe twice a week. I don't know. You can set it up how you want between now and the Epic event day. And we're going to have you go through things in your quiet time. We're going to have you reading things. We're going to have you preparing. So each time we get together, you're going to be learning and growing our style of leadership. You're going to be learning how to lead 13-year-olds once they've come to Christ, how to get them stronger each week, how to lead a small group. And would you be open to that? Would you be interested? I want you to count the cost, because you're going to have to get up early or whatever, come early to the meeting. You're going to have to do some reading. Are you willing? And so you don't want to make it sound too easy, but not too hard, but not too easy. Like that it's going to cost them something, but it's also a privilege to be a part of this. Okay, so you want them in place at least 2 to 3 months in advance of your first Epic event, because then you'll start taking them down the path of what are the follow-up tools. What are you going to have the young people who get saved at 13 years old? What are they going to do immediately? Because you're going to have these new leaders go through that too, so they are really well versed in it. But also you're going to have them start learning leadership principles. We'll talk about that in a second. Secondarily, once people come to Christ, after the first Epic event, you start your small groups, and you've got the first trimester under your belt, the second trimester under your belt. After the second trimester, you're going to start wanting to recruit some of the 13-year-olds who might be 14 or might be getting close to 15, depending on where they were when they came to Christ and they came to the event. By the time they're ready for their third trimester, say, would you be interested in taking a leadership training track? So by the time they're doing their third trimester, they're also taking maybe their first trimester of leadership training. So you're growing the next crop of leaders is what I'm talking about here. Okay, so you're always having leaders in the pipeline. So now, as we're training these guys, one thing you're going to realize, and a lot of these exponential church leaders will tell you, that you'll end up having weekly meetings with them for the rest of your life. Okay, so like you've got the main meeting, but you've got these guys. You're having meetings with these leaders, all the leaders of small groups. They become your core. Your connect groups, whatever you want to call them, those become your core. In fact, some pastors, these exponential church pastors, they might have 1,000 leaders, hundreds of leaders. They consider that their real church. In fact, Pastor Jason in LA told me, he goes, that they're my real church. I can give them real meat. Like I really want them to grow, because I know if I get it into them, they'll get it into the others. Even though there's prescribed curriculum that they'll be going through, you still want to care about the heart and the character of these leaders, because what's inside them is what will come out. You'll be telling them what to do, and as far as during the meetings, what to go over and that kind of thing, but still you want to be able to trust what's inside them. So it's a new way of thinking, that part of what we're doing, we're raising up leaders. These leaders are the multipliers. It's like the secret sauce, right? These become not just small group leaders, but they multiply themselves. And so ultimately we want all converts, once they start going down the path of growth, to be invited to be leadership. Not all are going to be the same level of leadership, but all can lead something. We can all lead people to Christ, right? But we want to show them that they've got potential inside them. Some might be a leader, and then a leader of leaders, and a leader of leaders. Some might just be a small group leader. It just depends. So you might be thinking, but what do I get them to learn? What do I get them to train in? So let me just give you, maybe you've heard this phrase before, leaders are readers. And we want to get them started down the pathway of, you got to start reading. Whatever your books are at school and stuff like that, we're going to give you other stuff to read. And so some of you know some of these books, but I'm just going to, I'm constantly reading. In fact, I was a guy when I first started in the ministry, I didn't even know there was such thing as growing as a leader. I had to start stumbling onto John Maxwell books and things like that, and then I started taking courses, and now my whole doctorate program in strategic foresight, it's actually strategic leadership with a specialization in strategic foresight. So anyways, some books you want them to read to just grow deep in their faith and ask questions and grow deep, so they're a deep well. Some you want to give practical tools on how to become a better leader. So obviously there's C.S. Lewis. You got to have them read some C.S. Lewis sometime. There's leadership books like Dave Ramsey's written this Entree Leadership. It helps them think as a leader. There's ones that will just grow them in their faith. This No Compromise Life Story of Keith Green. It'll just rip your heart out and make you weep for hours. Ravi Zacharias. I'm a Ravi Zacharias-aholic. I've read a ton of his books, listened to a lot of his podcasts. This one, Can Man Live Without God? And so learning how to defend their faith. This is a great one. I actually did with this one with my son when he was about 13. Letters from a Skeptic by Greg Boyd. And this is a great book. And of course, the idea is to have them read a chapter a week, and then you discuss it all together when you guys get together, and then you apply it. Ultimately, you can develop your own leadership curriculum. As you start right now, you might just start with some books. And so some of the starter books you might start with are John Maxwell. We all know about him. This 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. So that might be, these are qualities you're looking for in your leaders. And so you read about each quality and you talk about it. Here's one, 17 Essential Qualities of a Team Player. That might be one. Here's a great one to start with for young leaders, developing the leaders around you. There's another one called Developing the Leader Within You. So becoming a person of influence. And so there's lots of John Maxwell books that just to begin at a starting point, get them reading a chapter a week, you're talking about it, and then once you've developed the first 4 weeks, it's kind of a welcome to the family. We'll talk about it next time in the next lesson. But as far as what happens when somebody first comes to Christ, you're also going to want these new leaders to do those 4 weeks, whatever they might look like, so that they know exactly what to do with their small group once the small group starts. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about next time, is developing the small groups, the sticky path way for growth. So we got a couple discussion questions here. What leadership training do we offer now at the church at any level? Next question, would it work for our youth? And then finally, what is some of the best leadership training you've ever experienced anywhere? What made it so great? So discuss that and we'll come to the next lesson.